All right, for what feels like forever, the tech industry has had this excuse. It's three little letters. MVP, minimum viable product. But let's be real, it's often an excuse to ship absolute garbage. Well, guess what? The game has changed. Today, we are going to tear down that old idea and show you a much, much better way to build. Yeah, you heard me. It's a trap. And let's be brutally honest here. Most teams aren't building a minimum viable product. No, they're building a minimum broken product. You know the drill. You ship this incomplete shell just to test the waters. But you're not really validating anything, are you? All you're doing is teaching your very first users that your brand, your company, is just unreliable. Oh man, we've all heard this one, right? If you aren't embarrassed by your first release, you launch too late. I'm here to tell you that is probably the worst advice in the history of tech. Seriously, your users are not your crash test dummies. They have like a million other options, and they will absolutely not forgive a broken, frustrating experience just because you were in a hurry to launch. And this right here, this is the heart of the whole problem. It's this constant battle between speed and trust. We are obsessed with speed, aren't we? Hitting those launch dates, measuring outputs, chasing clicks. But it comes at a massive cost. Look, in a world that is just flooded with options, speed might get you a little bit of attention for a second. But trust? Trust is what actually keeps users around. Trust is what drives real revenue. So what happens if you don't build that trust? Well, you end up here. 95%. That's not a typo. Research from Harvard Business School suggests that up to 95% of all new products fail. Just think about that. That is a catastrophic failure rate. So the real question is, why? Why is it so high? And here's the kicker. The number one reason startups fail? It's not running out of cash. It's not getting crushed by the competition. Nope. A staggering 42% die for one simple reason. They build something nobody actually wants. So you're not failing because your engineering team is too slow. You're failing because you are perfectly, efficiently building the absolute wrong thing. Okay, so that brings me to maybe the ultimate cautionary tale, a perfect example of what happens when you prioritize a rushed launch over a complete experience. Let's talk about how Meta's Threads went from this massive, unstoppable hype train to a total dumpster fire, basically overnight. I mean, the launch was insane, right? They hit 100 million signups in just 5 days. It was the fastest growing app in history. You saw the headlines, the press releases were glowing, everything looked perfect. But then, reality crashed the party. Just 2 weeks later, 80% of those users were gone. Poof, vanished. And the collapse was just stunning. Look at this. Daily time spent on the app crashed from a pretty healthy 19 minutes a day all the way down to less than 3. The hype was just a mirage. The user base completely evaporated because, at the end of the day, the product just wasn't ready. So here's the big lesson that Meta and frankly all of us learned the hard way. They rushed to market, right? They saw all the chaos happening over at Twitter and thought, this is our chance. But here's the thing, market opportunity does not excuse an incomplete product. It's a fatal mistake every single time. So why did everyone leave? Well, because the app was missing the absolute basics. I mean, no search function? Really? No desktop experience? No private DMs? Look, users might forgive you for missing some fancy bells and whistles, but they will never forgive you for not being able to do the one basic thing they showed up to do. I love this quote from Glenn Coates, the VP of product at Shopify. He's talking about prototyping with AI, and he's just brutally honest about his own process. He says, "It helps me realize how dumb my ideas are before my team has to waste time on them." And that just hits, right? So I have to ask you, are you shipping your dumb ideas all the way to production? Okay, so if the MVP is dead, then what's the alternative? How do we actually stop shipping broken stuff? Well, we need to make a big strategic shift. We need to go from viable to lovable. It's time we all start focusing on building the minimum lovable product. So what is a minimum lovable product, or MLP? It's not just about being viable. It's about creating delight. It's the version of your product that a small, very specific group of users will absolutely love. Not just tolerate, but love. Because it solves their problems so perfectly, so flawlessly, that they become your first evangelists. They're the ones who go out and tell everyone they know about what you've built. You can think about it like this pyramid here. At the bottom, your product has to be functional. I mean, obviously it has to work. The next level up is reliable. It has to work consistently every time. But the goal, the very peak you're aiming for, is lovable. That's where you provide a delightful and complete core experience. You can't skip the first two steps, but you absolutely cannot stop there either. So how do you get there? The key is to narrow your focus, like really narrow it down. As product leader Lenny Rachitsky puts it, you need to solve a smaller piece of the customer's problem, but solve it completely. So stop trying to build 10 different half-baked features. Instead, build one, just one, flawless feature that completely wipes out their pain. Okay, but you might be thinking, how do I build something lovable without spending, 6 months and a mountain of cash on engineering? And the answer is AI prototyping. This is the modern playbook. This is how you build an MLP fast and super efficiently. And it really comes down to 3 simple steps. First, you fake the backend so you can validate the entire user flow from start to finish. Second, you leverage amazing tools like Vercel's V0 to build pixel-perfect, interactive prototypes in like seconds. And third, when it's finally time to write code, you build what we call a thin slice of perfect functionality. All right, let's dig into that first tactic, faking the backend. I mean it, don't build a database yet. Use an AI like Claude or ChatGPT and have it generate a ton of realistic mock data for you. And I mean really realistic. You want it to simulate success states, but more importantly, you need it to simulate error states, rate limits, all the stuff that goes wrong. You have to test how your app feels when things break before you ever write a single line of backend code. Okay, so once you've validated the entire flow and you have your interactive prototype, then you can finally move to production code. But you have to be absolutely ruthless. This is the thin slice we talked about. Your product should do one useful thing end-to-end perfectly. That means you cut the dashboard, you cut the settings pages. Seriously, if a feature doesn't directly prove your core idea, get rid of it. But look, even with all these great tactics, you can still just build the wrong thing faster. So before you do any of this, you need a serious gut check. Before you create that next Jira ticket, I want you to ask yourself these 4 questions from Pragmatic Institute. Ready? Question 1, and it's the most important. What problem are you actually solving? Okay, question number 2. Is that problem urgent? Is this a my hair is on fire kind of problem for your users? Or is it just a mild inconvenience they can totally live with? Because if it's not urgent, trust me, they're not going to go looking for a solution. Number 3, is it pervasive? How many people out there actually have this urgent problem? Are you solving something for like 3 people in a basement? Or is there a real widespread market waiting for what you're building? And finally, the one that really matters. Is there a willingness to pay? Will someone, anyone, actually pull out their credit card and give you money for this solution? If the answer to any of these 4 questions is no, I'm serious. Just step away from the keyboard. And here it is, your final reality check. I want you to really honestly think about this. Let's say your biggest competitor tomorrow magically fixed all their main problems. Would your product still matter? Would it still have a reason to exist? If the answer isn't a loud, confident yes, you are not ready to build. So this is it. This is the formula. It's doing that deep discovery, truly understanding the customer, and combining it with super fast AI prototyping. When you do that, you can deliver a flawless core value. That is how you build a minimum lovable product. Look, the era of using MVP as an excuse to ship broken garbage is over. It's done. Stop treating your users like they're your personal crash test dummies. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What is the most broken, absolutely useless MVP you have ever been forced to use? I'd love to hear about it. Now go build something people love.